Every day, peasants woke to a battle for survival. No armies, no swords, just the land beneath their feet and the unpredictable forces of nature above them. With the weight of the world on their shoulders, they were the unseen lifeblood of medieval society, their survival the key to the kingdom's very existence. Their lives weren't marked by glory or conquest, but by a relentless fight for the most basic of human needs: food, shelter, and security. In this documentary, we uncover the true survival manual of the medieval peasant. They lived under the unyielding grip of feudal lords, faced devastating plagues, and struggled through famines. Yet they endured. Their strategies, born of necessity and sheer will, laid the foundation for much of modern society. And astonishingly, the lessons they learned in the face of despair remain as critical today as they were centuries ago. Kings and knights may have received the accolades, but it was the peasants who carried the weight of the world. How did they survive wars, oppression, and unpredictable disasters? And can their hard-earned wisdom help us navigate the challenges of the modern age? From the 5th to the 15th century, medieval peasants lived at the mercy of a harsh feudal system. They worked the land they didn't own, bound by the unyielding demands of lords, often toiling from dawn to dusk for little pay. Survival meant enduring unpredictable weather, constant war, and famines that ravaged entire communities. Theirs was not a life of glory or recognition. It was a life of struggle, where every day was a fight to hold on. One of the most significant moments in peasant history came in 1066 with the Norman conquest of England. William the Conqueror's victory over King Harold altered the landscape of England forever. As William redistributed land to his supporters, peasants found themselves more tightly bound to the land than ever before. The feudal system grew stronger, tightening its grip on those at the bottom. But this was not a system that could go unchallenged. In 1381, the peasants' revolt erupted across England, driven by oppressive taxes and the increasing suffering of the lower classes. Led by figures like Wat Tyler, this revolt, though crushed, demonstrated a growing dissatisfaction with the feudal order. The revolt wasn't just a response to immediate hardships, it was a cry for change, a demand for something better. Though the peasants' hopes were dashed that day, the message was unmistakable. The survival of the common people would not be so easily ignored. Each dawn brought a new battle, a struggle not against armies, but against the land itself. Peasants rose from their humble homes, their bodies weary, but their minds sharp, knowing that the land could either save them or destroy them. Survival was never certain. It was a gamble where every season was a roll of the dice and the odds were never in their favor. But they fought on, every day, driven by one simple truth. Survival meant more than just working the land. It meant knowing it, every inch of it. The seasons, the soil, the crops. It was all a game of strategy and instinct. If a single crop failed, it could mean starvation. So peasants did not rely on one harvest alone. They grew wheat, barley, oats, peas, and beans, knowing that the failure of one would not take them all down. The land was unforgiving, but it also offered a solution, if you were clever enough to see it. However, survival wasn't just about what grew from the earth. It was about what they could build with their hands. The medieval peasant was no mere farmer. They were blacksmiths, weavers, carpenters, and craftsmen. They turned raw materials into tools, shelter, and clothes. Self-reliance was their greatest weapon against the unpredictable forces of nature and the cruelty of their rulers. Every tool crafted, every garment sewn, every home built was a small victory over the forces trying to crush them. And when disaster struck, when the crops failed, when the weather turned, when the very earth turned against them, the peasants knew they had one last chance: each other. In times of famine and plague, villages became lifelines. Sharing what little they had wasn't a choice, it was survival. It wasn't about charity, it was about necessity. When a neighbor's family had nothing, another would step in. In some villages, entire communities survived not because of individual strength, but because they understood that together they could endure. Take the Great Famine of 1315-1317. A perfect storm of weather, crop failures, and rising tensions led to one of the most devastating famines in European history. The land that once fed them now betrayed them, turning barren. For some peasants, it meant choosing between sharing their last bit of food or keeping it for their own survival. There were no easy choices. Entire villages were decimated by starvation, but others found a way to hold on by relying on the community, pooling their resources and risking everything to ensure no one was left to die alone. The power of the medieval peasants' survival lay not just in their resilience, but in their ability to adapt, to rely on one another, and to turn despair into action. When the land failed them, when the world seemed to crumble, they found a way forward, together. Years of unbearable taxes, hunger, and relentless suffering drove them to the edge. The peasants had been pushed too far. In 1381, they began to march, not just toward London, but toward something far more dangerous, the possibility of standing up to the system that had kept them chained for centuries. This wasn't a rebellion for wealth. It was a desperate plea for dignity, for the chance to be seen as more than mere property of the land. Thousands of men and women, farmers, laborers, and tradespeople converged on the heart of the kingdom, their rage and desperation fueling a march that could not be ignored. The king's soldiers, armed and waiting, stood in their path, but the peasants were undeterred. London trembled under the weight of their fury. Yet in the end, the revolt was crushed. Leaders like Wat Tyler were slaughtered in the streets, and the blood of the uprising stained the city. The revolt may have been defeated, but in that moment, something irrevocable had been unleashed. Their courage and defiance left a crack in the feudal system that would eventually shatter it, setting the stage for a new world. Though they had little power in the grand scheme of things, the peasants showed us something profound, that survival isn't simply about enduring, it's about rising, even when all seems lost. It's about demanding your voice be heard and fighting for a future where you are no longer invisible. They remind us that no matter how dire the circumstances, resistance is always an option, and sometimes just standing up is enough to change everything. Medieval peasants were not just survivors, they were innovators. From mastering the land through crop diversification to finding strength in communal bonds, they forged the survival strategies that held entire societies together. Their lessons weren't born out of luxury, but out of sheer necessity and resilience. The survival manual they created still speaks to us today, offering valuable wisdom for a world that, in many ways, still faces the same struggles. With climate change, economic instability, and social unrest, we're confronted with challenges not unlike those of medieval peasants. Their ingenious survival tactics offer us a blueprint for how we can build resilience, adapt to adversity, and foster communities that support one another. As we face the uncertainties of our time, the question remains: are we ready to apply the lessons of the past to our future? What would it take to create a society as strong as the villages that endured through the darkest of ages? Thank you for joining us on this journey through the trials and triumphs of the medieval peasant. If this documentary gave you valuable insights into the resilience that helped them survive, don't forget to hit that like button and share with others who need to hear this story. If you want to see more thought-provoking content like this, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment and tell us, what survival strategies from the past do you think we need today?